Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about staying silent. In particular, we're going to talk about the problem of staying silent when you have something so-called negative to say. A critique, a disagreement, negative feedback, something you feel might be a confrontation or cause a conflict, so you keep it in order to keep the peace or for whatever other justification you use. Today we're going to have a look at how dangerous that behaviour is, how much it hurts you, and how much it actually hurts the other person for you to do this. Now this is quite often excused as noble behaviour, isn't it? The idea of staying silent, keeping your resentments and your anger to yourself. There's many philosophies that condone this. They think that is taking the higher road. But I absolutely disagree with that. Now, that doesn't mean that I condone complaining about everything all the time. I don't want you to overcorrect on this. But this is about something important coming up for you, a breach, a compromise of your values, of what you believe to be right and true and what you stand for, and you remaining silent despite having that feeling. That is a problem, and there's nothing noble about keeping it to yourself. Now, some people are at least self-aware enough to not justify this as nobility and to call it what it is, cowardice. The only reason we stay silent when it might be confrontational or controversial or whatever is because we're scared of how people are going to react. That is the only reason anyone ever lies. I don't care what your excuses are, there is no non-coward based reason for lying. So, when we hold in these confrontations that might hurt someone's feelings, that might cause a ruckus, that might be embarrassing or humiliating to ourselves, we're just doing it because we're afraid of the consequences, whether they're realistic or totally fantastic. This is actually a classic example of conditioned dishonesty, the kind of trained dishonesty that we grow up with. Children, very young children, don't do this. If they've got a problem with you, if they've got negative feedback for you, if they've got a judgment about you, you hear about it. They get trained out of that. They're born knowing it's okay to do that. And then they get taught that it's not. They get taught that it will lead to violence. They get taught it will lead to humiliation, that somehow it harms other people to tell them the truth about themselves. You've been taught that, and today I want to challenge that teaching. As Jordan Peterson says, and I'm paraphrasing, staying silent when you have something important to say is a form of lying. Let's start self-servingly by having a look at the damage you do to yourself when you do this. Disrespect. You are disrespecting your views, your truth, your opinions, your feelings. Keeping something in when you have an urge to speak it, when it seems important to you to express this, is self-disrespect. You're saying, it's not worth sharing. You're saying, shut up, you. Imagine you spoke to somebody else like that. Imagine every time they wanted to give you feedback, every time they had an idea or an opinion, or they had a view of the situation that was different. You told them to shut the fuck up. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. It's not worth saying. It only does damage. Keep it to yourself. Now imagine you did that to, say, a child 3-4 times a day, every day, for the rest of their life. How did they end up? Did they end up confident? Do they end up in high-quality relationships? Do they end up with a wonderful job? No, they end up in the bottom, struggling, don't they? Well, that's what you're doing to yourself. You are self-bullying when you hold in your truth. Now, I'm not saying you should speak every thought that pops into your head. We're talking about the important stuff, the stuff you feel strongly about, right? Well, we're talking about everything a little bit, but let's focus on the stuff you feel strongly about. If you were to silence somebody else every time that they tried to speak like that, you would be a bastard. You would be a bully. You'd be a narcissistic psychopath. And yet you do it to yourself probably multiple times per week, if not per day. And you wonder why you're not confident. You're prioritizing other people's emotional comfort, or you imagine so, over your own self-validation. Now, one of the number one confidence problems that most people have in this world is that they have to get their validation from other people. They need other people to say, you're a good boy, you're a good girl, you matter. And because they need other people to say it, other people are in control of their quality of life, other people in control of their confidence. If you need to get it from someone else, then that someone else can destroy you. The secret to confidence is knowing how to get it from yourself, and not the arrogance of lying to yourself into thinking you're a good person, but the confidence of being able to recognize what's true about you, to accept it, to respect it, to give it a voice. When you prioritize somebody else's slight emotional comfort over that, think how low on the totem pole you're putting it. Somebody else can't have a slight feeling of guilt or anxiety or anger because you got something to say. You're saying it's not worth shit to say it. That means you're saying that you're not worth shit. Wonder why you feel bad about that. Not standing up for yourself and not standing by what you believe in is sulfuric acid to your confidence. It is one of the most damaging things you can do. Stay silent when there's something important to say. There's almost nothing worse you can do to yourself in terms of ruining your own self-confidence. There's some other problems. You miss out on a chance to connect with other people. Now, there's a big myth that connections are built on harmony and good times and laughter and shared experiences that are positive. That's simply not the case. While those things have their place, I don't think they're the most important thing at all. I think confrontations, more than anything else, build deep connections. See, getting through a conflict, resolving the problem together, there's nothing more connecting than that. To start apart and to work to come together. Even if that final place is to respect each other's views but hold different views from there on out. There's almost nothing more powerful for building an honest, deep, trustworthy, respectful connection than that. So when you're playing it safe and keeping your shit to yourself, you're basically holding people at arm's length. They can't get in. They don't know who you really are. They can't connect. They never have conflict, so they might like you because you're pleasant to be around, but in the same way that they like eating a piece of cake now and then, or they like a nice bit of sunshine, they're not going to want to stay your best friend. They're not going to want to marry you. You're not really deeply connected. You're just kind of nice to be around. That's the recipe for remaining alone. You gaslight yourself. See, one of the things I've discovered about the truth is that it needs to be expressed and explored to become real. You don't really know what you think. You don't really know what you feel. You don't really know what you believe until you try to put it into words or actions. Until you try to make it into something, manifest it in some way. It remains a kind of soupy mess inside your mind. And so if you're always keeping it in, you don't really know what it is. And it won't take long before you really don't know what it is. If you get into a habit of moderating yourself so that you don't get into conflict with other people, you'll start to forget what you actually stand for. You'll start to believe the moderation. Something you used to disagree with strongly will become something you tolerate, and then something you accept, and then you don't remember if you really agree with it or disagree with it. I always say who you are is made up of your preferences, kind of like a binary code of on and off. There's these switches. We have things we're for and against, things we like and dislike, and anybody's personality could be broken down in just a huge list of likes and dislikes, and that would be like the fingerprint of their soul, of their personality. So if you've got all those switches sitting in the middle, you've never expressed them, or you barely ever express them, so you don't know which way you really lean. You haven't really dived into it, had somebody confront you and maybe change your mind and help you figure out where you stand on things, then you're going to end up in a position where many of my clients end up, which is they have no fucking idea who they are. They don't even know what they stand for. They get outraged by stuff they don't even know if they actually care about it. They're apathetic about things, but they think it might actually be important to them. They don't know. It's a horrible position to be in. I mean, is there anything worse than not really knowing who you are? I mean, what else is there to even know about? We can't trust that any of the outside world even exists. All we know is what happens inside our own mind. So if you don't even know that, you don't know anything. When you refuse to engage in conflict and confrontation, you miss out on the education of other people's views. You can either hone a point and get even stronger in your position by combating somebody else, by debating the point and finding that they're wrong and you're right and getting even more sure of yourself, or they can make some really good fucking points and you actually, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I need to adjust some stuff. Either way, you end up wiser. Now, who would you rather be as you get older? A wise person or a fucking dumbass? Well, you get wise by debating ideas, right? By hearing other points of view, by having the holes in your argument pointed out so you can learn how to fill them, and finding what the truth actually is. If you just sit there going, I'm going to keep it all to myself and just listen to people, all you're going to get is their side of the story with no resistance from you, no calibration. And without that, you're not going to figure out what the truth is, and you're going to end up knowing no more as you get older than you did when you were younger. You'll fail to set boundaries. People will walk all over you. You'll build up resentment towards them, even though it's not really their fault, because how are they supposed to know what your boundaries are if your mouth's always shut? How are they supposed to know where to stop if you don't resist? What, they're supposed to guess? You think they can read your fucking mind? You think everyone thinks like you? They don't. I promise you that. Nobody thinks like you. Nobody knows what your preferences are. Nobody knows what your boundaries are. You might think it's obvious. You might think it's common. You're wrong. You've got your own unique little set of things. And what they're going to do if you don't speak up is assume that they're getting it perfectly right. That's what they're going to do. So as they walk all over you and you sit there eating shit, they're going to be like, hey, this guy likes it. He hasn't said a word. He must be into it. This leads up to you building resentment. Unfairly. They've done nothing wrong, actually. Until you set boundaries, you don't know if they're deliberately disrespecting you or just naive to what you really stand for and what you believe in. But also you're going to set precedents that are hard to break. The longer something goes unspoken, the harder it is to bring up, and the more the behaviour sets in. So even when you do confront them later, it's going to take ages for them to change their behaviour because they're locked into a habit now. If you nip it in the bud nice and early, it doesn't grow into anything. Now I don't want to put you off resetting expectations and boundaries with people because that's the second best option to the first, which is speaking your mind immediately. But if it's hard, if it takes work and they keep slipping and you have to confront them over and over again, you've only got yourself to blame. You should have fucking spoken earlier. This is the cost of doing that. Small irritants will start to become deal breakers. Little things that actually aren't that big a deal. You could tolerate them, you could accept them because they don't compromise your values, they're just against your preferences. They could become a really big deal that just fills up your bandwidth, plagues your mind, leads to fucking divorce, leads to you storming out of your workplace, leads to you abandoning your friends, all because you didn't say something. See, the funny thing about little irritants is often you don't actually need to change them, you just need to say something. You just need it to be acknowledged, called out. It can even become a joke between you. In fact, in the healthiest relationships, the thing that most annoy us about each other are the things that we laugh about. That's what happens if you call it out early and make it a small deal, because that's what it actually is. If you hold it in, you'll start to think it's a big deal. It will combine with all the other little things that you hold in, all those other little grievances, and it'll become this big dark cloud in your mind of, they treat me badly. No, they fucking don't. You're just too quiet. And probably the most important point, you're a fucking liar. Hypocrite much? Would you like it if people lied to you? Do you want it that if people have feedback for you that would improve your life, or that people notice that you're doing something that sabotages your success, or they notice that you're doing something that ruins your relationships, you want them to keep that to themselves? You don't want to know about that? You just want to go on blindly, repeating the same mistake, unaware that you're creating all these problems, thinking that something else is doing it, not knowing the real cause is you? Now, if that's you, fair enough, but I don't know why you're watching like a self-development video. Go back to having a life that sucks, you know? But if you want a life that's good, you're going to need that feedback. You're going to need to have other people go, dude, this is actually you doing this. And you go, oh shit, it's me. Fuck, at least I know what to do about it now. Well, if that's how you feel, if that's what you want other people to do for you, why aren't you doing it for them? A bit unfair, don't you think? To expect other people to help you in this way if you're not going to help them in the same way. Tit for tat, brother. And last point I make, a little one. You might be scared of confrontations until you get into it. It's thrilling. Getting into a confrontation, getting into a conversation that you're not sure is going to go well, that is almost certainly going to get some resistance, some blowback, maybe even turn into a big thing, you'll never feel more alive, especially if you're the timid type who doesn't usually do this. You might wonder why your life's boring and blasé and why you just masturbate to porn and watch Netflix and smoke weed and do nothing with your life and feel like it's just sort of racing by and you're all apathetic. Maybe you need some thrills, and there's no healthier thrill than a good, solid, honest confrontation. It's better than a roller coaster. You'll love it once you get into it. Now let's talk about the damage to other people, because this is the nobility lie. The idea, look, I know it might harm me to keep shit to myself, but at least other people benefit from this noble behaviour. I'm protecting them from this painful stuff. Yeah. I learned this working with criminal offenders. When I was a probation officer rehabilitating them, I learned that if I didn't tell them the truth about what they were doing and who they are, at least as I saw it, they went on and did harmful shit to people, as they always had done, and then they ended up in prison, as they always did, and everybody involved had their life fucked up by it. And there came times where I realized if I don't speak up, someone's going to get raped, someone's going to get fucking murdered, at the very least somebody's car's going to get stolen. I got to say something. Now I feel like I'm talking to someone who's not going to listen, and I feel like I'm being judgmental, and I feel like they don't want to hear this, but what I found in actuality is that as many as 1 in 5 of the criminal offenders I worked with really did listen to me, and what blew my mind is how many times they didn't know what I was pointing out to them. Like if I'd point out to a guy who beats up his wife that his problem is that he drinks too much, he can't handle his alcohol, sometimes he'd be like, fuck, I've never thought of that before, it's always when I'm drunk. Like he really didn't know. And in just having that awareness, he's like, I don't need to drink, fuck it. And then he never hits his wife again. How many beatings did I just save her from by pointing out something that I thought was obvious and thought he would resist? It became very clear, especially as I started to work with more and more dangerous people. No matter what resistance I might expect, and no matter how pointless it might feel to say these truths, lives depend on me doing it. And at the very least, I can only sleep at night knowing that I tried. Knowing that, hey, I gave this guy every chance to correct his behaviour. I pointed out anything that might have been in his blind spot. And if he continues to do bad behaviour on that, I've done all that I can. The burden doesn't lie with me. But if somebody does something and I didn't say something, that shit will keep you awake for weeks. When you don't tell other people how you see them, you prevent them from seeing themselves clearly. Like when you get a haircut, you have to hold a mirror up to the back to see if it looks even. You can't see that yourself. Well, all of us have this blind spot. For some people it's gigantic, for others it's slim, but we all have this space of we don't know what we don't know. We have this element of there's something I'm doing, there's something wrong with what I'm doing, the way I'm thinking or believing or behaving or all of the above. But I don't know what it is. I just know I get bad results, right? I just know that dude hates me, and I know that didn't work out, and I know I missed out on the job opportunity again, and I know it must be something to do with me because I am involved. I just don't know what it is. Well, as another person, you might see that shit clear as day. In fact, you might think it's so obvious you don't even think to mention it. Like, he must know that, surely. Actually, maybe not. Think of it this way. If the person knew what they were doing wrong, and they knew it to the depth of like, oh my god, that's what causes my problems, they really would stop doing it. Anybody who knows their problem and keeps doing it doesn't really know their problem. Because the real problem is, why do I keep doing it even though I know? Well, some people need that feedback, but most of the time they just need the feedback where someone goes, well, it's because you do this. Right? It seems so obvious to you, but to them, absolutely, they have no idea. So when you don't give feedback, you withhold that information. Just think of the ramifications of withholding that information. I'll tell you a story. There was a girl, I've told the story many times before, girl that called me out for my self-deprecating humour. It used to be my kind of weapon of choice for making people like me. I'd make fun of myself in this really kind of hilarious way. And a lot of people liked it. They liked me like going on a rant, these kind of like impromptu stand-up comedy performances I'd give in social situations, just ripping on myself. One girl, just one, said, you know what, it's charming and it's funny, but it's pathetic. I know you really mean it. I know you don't like yourself very much. Words to that effect. I can't remember exactly what she said, but that planted a seed that led to me becoming the man I am today. That planted a seed of doubt about the way I was behaving. The thing I loved about myself the most, the self-deprecating humour. For the first time, somebody said, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. And I'd never thought to question it. And as soon as I questioned it, I'm like, that's fucked up. Why am I so mean to myself? Why do I use ripping on myself to make people like me? Why would I think that's attractive to women to do that? And so on. I started asking some questions I'd never asked. Now, it took many years for me to ask these questions. But if she had not spoken up, I don't know if I'd even be a nice guy coach. I don't know if I'd be out of this. I might be like most nice guys in their 30s, married to someone they don't really like, full of resentment, in a shit job, just living a life of mediocrity going, what the fuck is wrong? I just hate this shit. I could be there if she just hadn't given me that small piece of brutal but absolutely necessary feedback. Now, what will happen to the people you don't speak to? What's going to happen if you're the only one who could have said it and you don't? What if the thing that you see that bothers you about them is their Achilles heel? It's the thing that ruins their life. You know, I once had a criminal offender come in and just yell at me for like 15 minutes and just be so resistant, so difficult. And I went to my supervisor or a senior member of staff and I was just like, man, this guy's such a fucking pain in the ass. And the guy just looked at me and said, yeah, that's why he's in here. And it clicked for me. I'm like, dude, that's his problem. The way he talks to me, the resistance, that is symbolic of all the problems he's ever had in his life. He gets into shit because this is the way he is. And if I can give him a mirror to see that, I'm like, dude, you cause your own conflicts. Maybe he'll stop doing it. Now, that particular guy didn't stop doing it because he had severe brain damage and couldn't learn like how to correct his behaviour. But most people aren't like that. Most people, if you point out, like, dude, the reason you always have bad relationships is because you keep doing this one thing. A lot of times a guy will be like, that's the reason? You know, and he'll start to question it. You steal time from them. If you're in a relationship or a friendship or a job even, you steal their time when you let them think that you view them in a more positive way than you actually do. If you were to give them the truth about how you feel about them, they might choose to not be with you anymore. They might choose to not work at this job anymore if they realize they're not very good at it, and they might choose to not be your friend or your partner anymore if they realize that you don't like them as the way that they are, and so on. But every second that they don't have that information is a second you've stolen from them. They're going to figure it out eventually. If they live long enough, they're going to figure out how you really feel. They're going to figure out whether or not they're good at this job and so on. How many years are you going to let that drag out? So when you give someone confrontational feedback, you're giving them a chance to bail out of a situation that's not right for them early on, not too late. Another key thing to keep in mind, silence is consent. If there's a behaviour and people are watching it and they don't say anything, the perception of the person doing that behaviour is that these people agree with me. They don't think of it as neutral, right? If you were to walk down the street and throw some rubbish on the ground in front of a bunch of people and they looked at it and just didn't say anything, what are you going to assume? You're going to assume that they're okay with littering, aren't you? You're going to tell yourself if they weren't okay, they would do something, they would say something. Of course, that's not true, is it? Most of the time, silence is not consent. Most times silence is rage held in. So a person can go about engaging in long-term problematic, hurtful behaviour, thinking that everyone's on board with it because everyone's too embarrassed or too scared to speak up. It's amazing to me how many times I've confronted someone and said, that ain't right. And they've gone, really? I thought it was all good. Everyone else is doing it. I'm like, no, they're not. He's like, oh yeah, they're not. You know, but nobody said anything. Yeah. Nobody ever says anything about anything. That's why. Here's the thing to keep in mind. If you're going to stay silent about something, you have to tell yourself that means I consent to it. That means I promote and encourage this behaviour. You know, you see someone hit their kid in front of you, you're like, okay, I'm promoting domestic violence. That's what I'm going to do by staying silent. You see someone drink driving, okay, I'm encouraging drink driving by staying silent. And so on. If you start to see it as a, like, okay, if I stay silent, I'm encouraging it. I'm saying do more of this, repeat this, especially when it's behaviour to you that you don't like. Then see how comfortable you are staying silent. Because the truth is you are condoning it. Obesity, bad relationships, shit career, victimhood, loneliness. These are the ongoing problems of someone who's never confronted about a bad behaviour that they don't realise is a bad behaviour. Nearly everything in your life, in terms of things you don't like, suffering, bad results, is something you've actually created. Your decision making led to the moments where you currently are. If there's anything in your life you don't like about your health, about your career, about your relationships, about your philosophy, you got yourself here. It's self-sabotage if you're suffering. Every time, almost every time. It's very rare that the outside world actually does anything bad to you without your involvement or permission. So if you're watching somebody who's clearly done shit to themselves, you've got to assume they don't really understand that. And they're going to keep doing it because they don't understand it. They think it's bad luck, right? Like somebody has a string of awful relationships. They're like, oh, I just keep ending up with all these terrible people. No, you keep choosing terrible people. Nobody else is doing the choosing for you. You're the one saying yes to these people. That's your fucking problem. It's not like all people are bad. You choose bad ones. That's you, not them. Nobody else is doing this to you. You have a problem with your attraction. You have a problem with selection. You have a problem with qualification. If somebody doesn't know that, they will keep going through bad relationships thinking that people suck. You're also gaslighting people. You're saying, I like you more than I actually do. You're molding their reality. You're making them doubt things, especially if they try to call you out, right? If you're like, are you sure you don't have a problem with this? And you're like, no, I'm good. They now doubt their initial guess that you had a problem with it, and they were right. See, a lot of the time you're not as good at hiding your confrontation as you think you are. You might think you're just sitting there with a poker face looking silent, but it will show a lot of the time that you're upset or stressed or disappointed or in some mode of disagreement. And if somebody goes, are you alright? And you're like, yeah, no, fine, all good. It makes them go, fuck, maybe he's just tired or something. And they start to lose their ability to read people. See, people are actually pretty fucking easy to read if you trust yourself, if you're confident in your judgment. If you look carefully and go, what's the most likely mood that person's having, given their body language, given the situation we're in, given what I know about them, what's happening, most of the time you'll probably get it right. Yeah, they don't like this. But if they're like, no, I'm all good with it. Yeah, no, sign me up. You're going to be like, fuck, maybe I got it wrong. That's gaslighting. That's manipulation. You're fucking up their radar. That could lead them to choose the wrong partner. That could lead them to get into business with a scammy person because they don't trust their judgment anymore. You've got to validate people's judgment when they get it right. Say, fucking, you nailed it. I was really pissed off. I don't know how you spotted that. And they'll go, So that's what pissed off looks like. They register that information. They get better at reading people. That's good for them. It's good for you. It's good for everybody. Now, of course they might resist. Of course they might not want to hear this. You might be wrong a little bit, or they just don't agree with you or whatever, and you speak your mind and nothing good comes of it, at least so it seems. But aside from the benefits to yourself in terms of self-respect, confidence building, practicing confrontation, offering and inviting someone to connect with you, you might just be planting a seed with them. See, for me to correct my nice guy behaviors, it wasn't a magic overnight epiphany. It was like bleeding out from 1,000 wounds. I got so many tiny pieces of often indirect feedback that I had to compile it all together to go, fuck, I'm doing it all wrong. Right? I didn't get much direct feedback. I had to cherry pick. And I have no doubt that I got feedback early on that I resisted, disagreed with. I often played the victim when I was younger, so if someone gave me feedback I was doing something wrong, I'd say, yeah, but it's because of this and this, and reason why it's not my fault, and reason why I can't control it. And I feel bad for those people. They must have felt like, fuck, there's no point talking to this guy, he won't listen. But I was listening. I just wasn't comprehending. And then someone else told me the same thing again, and I was like, that's the second time I've heard that. And then by the time I'm like, that's the 50th time I've heard that, I should probably start listening. I've heard it from at least 5 very reliable people I trust and a bunch of others, and I haven't heard the opposite. I've heard no validation for what I'm doing as being a good idea other than from very unhealthy people. Maybe I'm wrong about this, and I'd eventually shift. I'd eventually, that thing where you tell your partner over and over again this piece of feedback, they don't listen to you, and then they hear it from their girlfriends, and they're like, oh my god, it's so brilliant. You're like, well, fuck you very much. I was saying it all along. Well, actually, you helped. You were building a foundation, but they needed at least one more person to say it, or they needed somebody who they didn't have resistance to for whatever reason to say it, or whatever. They needed a final piece of the puzzle. You don't understand. You plant seeds with people. You're laying out pieces of information that might remain disconnected for months or years, but then something brings it all together and they go, oh, that's what he was talking about. Fuck, he was right all along. Now, you might not be around for that revelation. You might not get the gratitude that you deserve. So be it. Wouldn't you rather just help? Can't you just put your ego aside and just go, well, if this is the truth and it helps him, one day it might click in for him. I might rescue him from a slight amount of misery combined with the effort of others who give him this feedback or whatever. I've done my job even if he never recognizes me, even if he hates me for it. It's one thing I always keep in mind. I do a thing called fearless coaching, which I got from Rich Litvin, which is I'm willing for my clients to never call me again, to walk away, to hate me, to ask for a refund if needed, if that's the cost of being honest. Because that's all I can do to help them. I have to give them what I really believe is the truth about their beliefs, especially, but their behaviour, about why they get the results that they get, in the hope that A, I'm right, and B, that they're able to turn that into something useful that improves their quality of life. Now, if they don't want to hear it right now, and if they don't like me, so be it. Because that's true nobility. To do what's right even though it hurts. So drop the idea that staying silent is noble. Because confronting with the certainty that you're going to lose, that's noble. Of course, if you want help building up the courage and the verbal articulation skills, the communication skills to be able to do this effectively and with minimal chance of getting your head kicked in, get in touch, dan@brojo.org, and we can talk about how you can assert yourself more confidently and more respectfully. Until then, see you next time. Have yourselves a good one.